Welcome to this video tutorial on how to take a model from Polycam and import it into Rhino. In this video I'm going to be using this 3D tree here that I scanned using Polycam's photogrammetry software, and we're going to be taking this 3D model and bringing it into our Rhino file for using for rendering or creating drawings. Now in order to do this you'll need to have a pro account in your Polycam account. To do this you can either pay for the software or you can sign up for a free trial to get a kind of pro account there, and that will allow you to then download models from Polycam that you can bring into other software. Now to download the model you just select the download button once you're on that model, and for this I'm going to use the OBJ mesh to export it. I found this is usually the best for bringing into Rhino as it comes with the texture as well and you don't need to do any remapping once you bring it in. Before I hit that export button I'm just going to go to the settings tab. Make sure I'm in metric units because I'm going to want to be in metric when I come into Rhino, and I'm going to make sure that my mesh up axis is on the Z axis. By default it's sometimes set to Y, so just set it to Z and it allows it to come in the right way when you bring it in. Once you've done that, we'll select OBJ and hit export, and that will download that file for us as a zipped folder into our downloads. From here you'll get a zipped folder that looks something like this, which will usually have the date of when you captured the scan on it. Now we want to start by just extracting that folder, so you just need to right click and hit on extract files or unzip depending on what software you use to unzip files. Hit OK and that will just unzip it to the same place, and then we can open it up and we'll find we have a 3D object file, which is essentially our OBJ file. We'll have a material file which contains the material information, and we'll have a textures folder which contains the textures for that particular model. From there I'm going to then open up Rhino, and in here we're just going to go to File, Import, and we're going to locate that model here. So here we can find in my Polycam folder I've got that dated model there, and we're just going to hit Open, making sure on the 3D object it's an OBJ file. When we bring it in, it will come up with a series of import options. Usually you don't need to touch these, so we're just going to hit OK to bring it in with the default settings. And here you can see it's brought in the model. Now usually Polycam uses and sets its kind of model units to meters, so if you're like me and you work in millimeters a lot of the time, the model will probably come in being really small. So usually when I bring it in, I'll just go into my zoom settings and I'm just going to click on the zoom selected button to zoom into the model like so. And there we can see we've got the mesh. Then I'm going to select it, select the scale, hit enter, and then we're just going to scale it up by 1000, and that will put it into meters. And then we're just going to hit zoom selected again just to zoom back out. Now often Polycam isn't super accurate with its kind of scaling, but it's pretty good, so you might want to check the measurements if you have a really precise object or you want a particular scale when you bring that in. Now usually because these are meshes and they're quite dense, you can see here it's made up of lots of little triangles here. In able to properly see it, I'll usually set my viewport then to rendered, and that will allow me to see the model with the textures on already. And you can see here what's really nice about OBJs is they come in fully textured with that kind of texture file straight from Polycam, so it's coming kind of ready to use there. A couple of things I usually do when kind of bringing this in, you can see here I've got a few floating bits of the mesh hanging around in the file which I want to tidy up. So if you want to delete any faces of that mesh, you can select your mesh like so. We're going to go to the mesh tools, which can be found under this little tab here, and we're just going to click on this delete faces option here. So making sure the mesh is selected, we'll select delete faces. I'm just going to pick the faces I want to delete. There's a little one down there as well, and then I'm going to hit enter and it will just delete those off for me. You might also just need to kind of rotate your object slightly. You can see mine's slightly weird angle there, so I'm just going to use the gumball just to rotate it by eye into position. Now often these won't be like perfectly flat on the ground anyway, but it's just getting it so it's nice and flat, so it's workable there. And I think that's pretty much there, and that's got it to a nice level. Once we've brought our model in, there's a few things we can start to do with it to turn it both into a drawing or to start to render it in our scenes. If you want to turn the 3D scan into a drawing, you can use tools like the section tool or the contour tool to start to cut kind of section lines through the model. The way this works, if we want to take contours of our model, is I'll usually draw a little cube by the side, and this just helps me guide the direction I want my contours to be. I'll select my model, type in contours, like so, the contour command. We'll select the base point, and this time I'm actually going to cut the contours almost like cross sections. So we're going to select the second point to be along this cube. That way it's going to cut kind of my sections as we move along the model, like so. Then the distance between contours I'm going to set as naught, as well, actually we're in millimeters, so I'm going to do 500 millimeters, like so. Hit enter, and there you can see I've just chopped up, and we'll just move it kind of out the way, a series of contours through that model. So really easy way to start to chop little sections through your scans. You could do that in plan as well, or you can kind of start to chop it up in any way you want to create maps or drawings from these particular models. Another thing you can start to do with these is actually start to render with them as well. Because they're fully textured, it allows me to then actually start to manipulate the lighting in the scene to start to create more kind of environmental or kind of atmospheric sort of renderings that we can create with this particular model. To do this, I'm just going to go into my render window, go and make sure that I'm on Rhino render for my current render, but you can use other render engines for this section as well. Under the render properties, just to test this, we're going to go down and we're just going to turn on the sun light, and we're just going to go to the sun settings and put it on manual controls, like so, and we're going to make it quite low in the sky and hit OK. And there you can see I've got a nice shadow now being cast on my model. We can also go and tweak that sun just by going to the render tools here, back to those sun settings, and we can tweak the altitude or the direction of that shadow if we want a particular kind of shadow casting on our model. This is a really good reason when doing your scans to take them on a very grey day. You kind of don't really want any shadows once you're doing a scan. That way you can add shadows later in your render, and it allows you to have more flexibility when you come to lighting the scene. We can also add new lights in. So here I've just added a point light here, and we can kind of hover up across the model like so. And if we go back to that rendered view, I can go into my properties panel. Maybe we make it a kind of bright red colour, and you can see that it's casting a nice red light on that model as well, and we can play around with the intensity of that too. So you can actually start to relight these models however you see fit in your scenes, and this can create quite dynamic renderings that are using kind of real world materials and textures from your scans directly in your renders that you're doing in Rhino. So that was just a quick video tutorial of how to take a model in Polycam and bring it into Rhino. I hope you found this video tutorial useful, and if you want to watch any other videos on 3D scanning, rendering or creating drawings in Rhino or V-Ray, please do check out the videos on the channel. Thanks for watching.